So today I'm going to do something a little different on the channel. Since turkey season is upon us, I'm actually going to go through the process on how to paint your turkey shotgun. This is a Mossberg 835 and it's owned by my brother, and as you can see it has seen better days. This particular model is an older model that had a camo pattern that was finely detailed, but it didn't have any bold colors on it. So my brother made an attempt to put some bold stripes on this to try to hide it a little bit better, but as you can see, we're going to see if we can do a better job. In this video, I'm going to show you where to mask off, what colors I use, how I lay out my pattern, and why I lay it out that way. And I'm going to go over some of the little tips and tricks, and even some of the terms that I use for the different stages of the paint application process. So the first step is going to be looking at the gun and finding out where I want paint and where I don't want paint. On this particular shotgun, I don't want any paint in the muzzle. I don't want any paint on the bolt. I definitely don't want any paint in the optics, but there's just going to be a couple of things that I'm going to mask off. So to get started, I'm going to go over just a couple of the items that you're going to need to apply a pattern on a firearm. The first thing you're going to need is clearly going to be paint. The paint that I'm going to use today is a paint that I picked up at a Tractor Supply. It's an oil-based flat finish. I've got a couple of colors here. I've got tan, browns, greens, and I have a gray as well. And really you're going to be looking at what your surroundings are, or where your surroundings are going to be whenever you're going to be using that weapon. Here in Virginia, most of your colors are going to be green and brown. There's not going to be a whole lot of tan, but I am going to apply some tans in moderation. During turkey season, everything's budding, got some grass that's getting green, but being the fact that we're going to be hunting in the woods, you're going to be around trees, you're going to be around sticks, you're going to be around briars and grass. And if you look at trees are mainly brown and gray. I'm actually not going to apply a whole lot of gray. I'm going to keep the highlights to a minimum. I want to keep this thing as green and brown as possible, and you'll see how I do that. Some of the other products that you're going to need are some kind of painter's tape. I got a couple thickness here. I like the blue painter's tape because once I get the paint to actually flash over and kind of soften up some, I can apply that tape and take it off without any damage to the base coat. You're going to need some type of cutting utensil, whether it be scissors or a knife. I like to wear just a disposable glove, and then you're going to need something to apply the pattern. And actually the big part of the pattern is going to be the tape, and I'm going to show you how I actually use the tape to apply a pattern. The second is going to be simple things like this. This is actually stuff that you can find at your hobby store. This is just like, you know, pine needle like replica stuff, something that I had here at the house. It's pretty cheap. You can pick them up, $20, $30. You can buy different leafy patterns or whatever you like. And I like using stuff like that over natural things because I can replicate it throughout the year. So if I am painting a rifle in the summertime, I can have certain stuff. If I'm painting in the wintertime, I can have the same patterns. I don't have to wait for this stuff to grow so I can snatch the leaves off it. The next one is actually going to be something that we've all seen, because I know everybody has probably watched camouflaging videos. It's just going to be this net. This is just the laundry basket netting. You know, everybody has it, or everybody's used it in their videos. So if you're painting a hunting rifle, it's going to be a little different than like you would be painting your AR-15. When I paint an AR-15, I use just bold stripes, something just to break up the pattern of the rifle, the outline of the rifle. When I do a hunting rifle, I do a little bit more detail. And just for example, I have this is a Tikka 1270. And as you can see, I go into a little bit more detail on the pattern just because this being a turkey rifle, I am going to be shooting at a turkey inside of 50 yards. So I want my pattern to be a little bit more detailed because, you know, turkey's visions are pretty good. So the more detailed I can get my rifle, the better it's going to hide. So with an AR-15, I just like, you know, mainly basic colors, bold stripes, because hopefully if I intend to hide that, I don't have to hide it as as well. I can just use bold stripes to break it up. And really it's that simple. Cover up the optic, cover up the areas you don't want paint to go in, cover the muzzle, make sure no paint gets inside the firearm, gets down the barrel, or covers up what you actually need to see to shoot. So I'm just using spray paint, so some of this is actually going to wear off, but I actually found that this type of paint, I actually got a little bit on a magazine, and when I sprayed it with brake clean to get it off, it didn't want to come off all that well. So this paint is going to stay on pretty well. I mean, if you're too worried about you know, the finish coming off, or you know, this thing not getting banged up or anything, you can definitely go have your firearm Cerakoted. But I will warn you, usually places have a minimum, and even if you do one color, it's going to be a minimum of probably $150, and then they'll go up from there per color. So you might spend $50 to $100 per color. So if you're doing a pattern, say this was like a 4-color pattern, you could probably spend, you know, $500 minimum. But it is going to last forever. I do a little Cerakoting myself. The stuff is awesome. It stays, it lasts, it's easy to apply. But when you start getting into optics, they don't like to use the heat cured stuff because a lot of optics can't handle the temperatures for the prolonged amount of time. So they'll use the air cured version, which usually takes between 3 and 5 days, I believe, to cure per color. So if you have a 5-color, you do the math. It's going to take a while for that to be applied. So the first color I'm going to apply is going to be this company's version of olive drab green. It's actually more, in my opinion, it's more of a brighter green than what I'm used to seeing olive drab being. I know that there are a lot of companies that have different names for different colors, and then there's a standard for different colors, but you'll be able to see what this one is. I actually like this green a lot. I think it matches the surroundings in this area quite well, so let's get to it. So there's actually 4 stages of the application of paint. The first one is going to be a wet coat, which when you spray it on, the paint's wet, as you can tell. The second is going to be once the paint flashes. And as you can see, this paint is actually just starting to flash. I've got some wet spots and some drier spots. So if you can take your finger and kind of run it, the back of your finger, and run it over an area, and you don't leave any marks, the paint has flashed. It's still really wet, but it has just became not a liquid anymore. The next step is going to be the soft phase, where the paint is still soft. That's going to be the phase where I actually apply the stencils. And then at the very end, you have your cured phase, which usually takes a lot of your spray paints 24 hours. When I apply paint, I like to have like a tack coat, top coat. So I do light coats, and then the final will be a little bit of a wetter coat. Most of your paints, that doesn't have to be applied really thick, because for one, all of your times are going to be different between your wet and your flash and your soft, and then the soft to cured. Everything is extended the thicker the coats. And I don't want to be out here all day, and I know you don't either. So if you try to apply a coat on top of a cured paint, it's not going to have the adhesion that you would once the paint is still flashed or soft. Let's go ahead and hit it with another light coat. So if you're worried about coverage, if you paint everything in 4 directions, you know, you have this direction, that direction, and then a direction each way here, you're going to cover everything. On something like this, usually if you just kind of clip in the areas that are hard to get first, the undersides, you know, around the edges, I like to clip all that stuff in first, and then I'll actually come through and just do the 2 angles so that I don't have to give the entire firearm 4 directions. So I'll come in, you know, like under the handguard, and I'll clip in those areas, the back of the optic, you know, where my adjustment knobs are, anywhere here under the, and especially firearms like this that have a rib, it's good to hit those in 4 directions so that you can get every area. But like I said, it doesn't have to be super heavy. These are just real light coats, and as you can see, just after those two light coats, I have enough green that I'm going to be ready for the next side. So as you can see, this paint has already flashed. It has a couple light spots that aren't quite flashed yet, but I think it's going to be ready for the second part of the base layer. So when you're painting a camouflage pattern, you're actually painting the foreground first. So whatever colors you want the foreground to be, when you apply your stencil, you're actually applying the background. So when thinking about your camo pattern, you have to think in reverse. Without a stencil, you're painting the background first, and then you're applying the foreground. But using stencils, it's the opposite. So what I want to stand out the most are my green and browns. So I'm going to apply those first, and then we're going to apply the stencil later. As you can see, it's super complicated, right? This company's color on that is earth brown, and I'm actually going to be using Rust-Oleum's version of earth brown. And as you can see, this color is already flashed. It is a little more of a brick, like a brick red versus a brown, but I think it complements the green really well. And all I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to lay a little bit of brown right next to this lighter brown. So it's going to be green, dark brown, light brown, all the way through, and that's going to be the color of our main bold stripes. Super complicated, right? So now I have greens and dark browns and light browns together heading in this direction. So now that when I lay my stencil on, I'm actually going to turn the stencil the opposite direction so that all of these colors are hit in those shapes. So on the opposite side, once this thing flashes, I'm going to flip the shotgun over and I'm going to do the exact same thing, but I'm going to be heading in the same direction. So the direction comes from this corner up. So now when I flip it over, the pattern is going to be the other way so that they're uniform on both sides. One thing I wanted to mention before we flip the shotgun over is this type of paint is like moisture cured. So really the only thing that's going to cure this paint is the air. So whether the firearm is in the sun, if it's outside, inside, whatever, it's going to cure about the same rate. A lot of times a little bit of air moving will get this stuff flashing a little faster, or even being outside, but moisture is what's going to cure this paint the best. So now that I got the gun flipped over, I'm fighting a little bit of a breeze here, but it's not terrible. Of course, the time that I want to make a video on this, I get a little bit of a breeze, but that's okay. I definitely can't emphasize enough that you don't have to be perfect, because trust me, when a turkey comes in at 40 yards, the last thing he's got to worry about is the color of the shotgun. One of the best ways that I've found to do my bold stripe stencil is just with like a piece of 2-inch painter's tape. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do a random design on the piece of tape, and then I'm going to remove it. Hopefully Hopefully I can do it without tearing the tape. So, like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, if you just put it on like this, you're going to have a negative. See, it just kind of looks like everything's shifted over. So what I like to do is I move it down. And then I just cut this side off. And then move this down here. So now I have a unique pattern. So now that my stripes are going in this direction, I'm going to apply my pattern the opposite direction. So it's actually going to capture every color. So now that we have all the stencils pre-cut and applied, just want to go through and just make sure that they're all secured, because any edges that are lifted, it's not going to have the quite the sharp edge that you're probably looking for. But I understand that these things being three-dimensional, you're not going to be able to apply a two-dimensional tape and get every little nook and cranny, but you get the gist of it. Just go through and just check them all, make sure everything's good. And what we're going to do is I want you to remember that whatever paint is applied from here on out, we're going to have these bold stripes that I was talking about earlier. So we're going to have the greens and the browns and the lighter browns. They're going to be showing through. This is going to be 4 stages, and we've only done 1 stage so far. So once I show you how to apply this next coat of paint, I'll show you what to do before you remove the stencils and then what to do after you remove the stencils. All right, so I'm going to lay this pine, the synthetic pine, just in small portions. We're going to go through the shotgun from the butt of the gun all the way to the muzzle. And all we're going to do now is just apply some tan, and this is going to be the tan that I wanted to really limit myself with. So wherever I put tan, you're going to see the greens and the browns from underneath look like grass. So let's just do a little section here. And as you can see, this tan actually here doesn't cover too well. So hopefully we can get some of the tans to kind of pop through. Okay, so the next layer I'm going to use is going to be, it's a gray. So really there's not a big difference between the gray and the tan. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this gray and I'm going to spray just the tape. And what that's going to do is that's going to really define these stripes. So right now, where I don't have tan, you're not going to be able to tell the difference between the pattern and the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a stripe of gray over every piece of tape, and what that's going to do is that's going to define the pattern. Well, I know it doesn't look like a whole lot right now. It just looks like a whole bunch of tan and gray. So once this flashes again, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull all the stencils off, and we're going to do the last final step. All right, so this is going to be the reveal. Let's see how we did. I actually think that looks pretty good. The last step is actually going to be softening these hard edges. You're still going to see them, but I'm going to soften them a little bit. And I'm actually going to use the netting. I'm going to put the netting down, and I'm going to spray the netting pattern just on the edges. And I'm going to use the green to do that because the green isn't going to be able to be seen as much on the bold stripes as it is on this light background. So it's actually going to blend the pattern with these bold stripes, and you'll see how that goes. All right, so this is where the gloves come in, because most likely you're going to get paint on your hands at this step. So the beauty of this netting is you can still see your pattern underneath. So I'm going to grab my green, and I am going to work just certain spots so it is going to soften just those hard edges. Well, I appreciate you sticking it out with me this long, but we still got half a gun to do. So that's it, pretty simple, right? 4 steps, takes about an hour. This paint is very easy and forgiving to work with. It's quick to dry, so you can flip it over and get your stencils on, get the pattern that you want on it. I'm gonna let it sit overnight to cure, and I'm not gonna put any clear coat on there. You can if you want. I haven't found a matte clear coat that is exactly matte. The Tika 1270 has a matte clear on it, but as you can see, it has a little bit of a sheen to it. It does protect it, but that's not the finish that I was looking for this 835. And I appreciate everyone watching. My name is Brian with Wilson Equipment, reminding you to get equipped, get out there, and get good. Thanks for watching.